Hi everybody! Welcome to the Indie Scientology podcast. I'm your host Andy Nolch, and it's pretty fantastic to be here on this first episode of the Indie Scientology podcast. This is a podcast that has everything to do with Scientology. Yes, that interesting religion you might have heard about. If you're looking for something funny, this will be a bit funny, but you're at the wrong place. You should probably check out the Kink TV show or search Andy Nolch. This podcast has everything to do with my religion, Scientology. There will be guests, and there will be discussions about L. Ron Hubbard's writings and his teachings, and it should be a pretty good podcast, and it will be quite fair as well. It won't be all pro-Scientology or all anti-Scientology or all pro the independent Scientology or all pro the Church of Scientology. It's just going to be everything, and it's going to be a bit of fun, and it's going to be educational. And so for this first episode, I wanted to just explain a bit about myself and how I got into Scientology. So that you at least know who your guest is. Oh, I better warn you, if you hear this noise during the podcast, don't be alarmed. It's okay. That was just me sipping at some green tea that's getting colder as the seconds go by, and I'm concerned. So, a bit about myself. So I'm Andy Nolch, and I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and I first got into Scientology in the year 2010. I had a friend mention I think he'd seen the South Park episode where it talks about Scientology. And I'd seen it as well years ago, but I can't really remember it. I just thought it was funny. It's funnier now that I've been involved with the church and I know what they were making fun of. So a friend said to me something like, do you know Scientologists believe this? And he said, I think he said the Xenu story. He said some, wacky story about aliens, and I was like, I don't know about that, I was just like, you can't believe that. It's just rumours and stuff. But I thought maybe they do, And so that I was a bit interested when I heard that. And I thought, I want to find out about that. And then also my mum came across a Industry of Death DVD, which is made by CCHR, and CCHR was started by Scientologists. And so I saw Industry of Death, and because my mum got it from a friend, and it just the message she said was, it's about psychiatry and that, but it's made by Scientologists, and I was like, ooh, interesting, it's kind of random. And then I watched it, and I thought it would have some sort of thing. I thought it would have something to do with Scientology, but it really didn't really have anything to do with Scientology. It just talked about psychiatry and how bad it is the whole time. And I agreed with a lot that it was saying. I thought it was over-exaggerated, and I still, to this day, think it's over-exaggerated. It's got the real corny music, and it tries to blame everything on psychiatry. But I definitely agree with it, and I felt like it, in my life, I was sort of in apathy, and it sort of got me out of that. I actually wasn't in the actual apathy tone. I was more in the, griefy tone, because I had some problems with depression. But anyway, so it sort of got me into anger, these damn psychs and these idiots, and they're so stupid in the hell they think that, you spend 3 years in university and you think you can help someone. And because I just thought psychiatry was just a stupid profession. No offense to anyone who's a psychiatrist, but I just kind of thought it was I imagine people who I went to school with who aren't really philosophical, just going and doing 3 years at university and passing some tests, and then suddenly they're qualified to sit next to someone and give them advice about their life and help them. I just thought the only person who would be a good psychiatrist or psychologist would be someone who's lived this really grand life and experienced all these things and was really wise. I only thought only then could somebody sit down and actually give good advice. And I was aware of antidepressants being a kind of crappy solution to people's problems. And I also had been to a psychologist a few times, maybe 3 times or something, and I thought it was pretty stupid as well. Like, the lady was nice, but like, it wasn't like she said, okay, this is what you need to do to help with your depression. You need to eat this diet and lay out a specific diet. You need to do these physical exercises. You need to study this, and like actually lay down a program. It was more like, oh, I'll just listen to you while you complain about things, and yeah, you should eat good. I'm not going to tell you what good food is, but you should eat good. Like, they don't even know what good food is. I mean, I could, right now, I've studied a lot of things. Right now, I'm smart enough to sit down with someone and go, I can tell you exactly how to cure depression, do these things, and boom, 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 But this psychologist who I saw back in 2010 couldn't do that. She just didn't know, and I don't think education system actually tells people specifically how to handle depression and stuff. So I don't know. I just thought the industry was really stupid, so I Industry of Death I really liked, and actually it is the first sort of conspiracy type documentary I've ever watched. It started after that. I have watched many since, all different types. But yeah, that was the first sort of conspiracy thing that this world isn't quite what it seems like. And so after I watched the documentary, I was like, wow, that was really nice. They just the Scientologists who made this don't want to preach and push their religion. They just want to try and stop psychiatry's abuses and stuff. And also, it's kind of like thinking, I wonder if these things that they're saying in this documentary is true. So I was sort of really interested in Scientology and finding out what's going on. I'd also heard that my mum, 20 years earlier, had done a IQ test with some Scientologists just on the street in the city. And they never contacted her back. And she goes to me, yeah, apparently I'm not smart enough. Like, she took it, because they didn't contact her back, she took it as she got a bad result, and they weren't smart enough for her. So I thought, all these Scientologists are interesting. Are they these super smart people or something? And also, there's all these sort of dots connected in a period of about 4 months for me, back in 2010. Also, there's a chain of restaurants in Melbourne called the Pancake Parlour. They're a pretty cool restaurant. Hence, that they're owned by Scientologists. Scientologists made them, and they were Scientologists, back from the 60s, old school Scientologists who were involved with it in Melbourne when it sort of started and stuff. And they're not involved with it now anymore. Which a lot of people aren't involved with it now anymore. I don't know. They could have done a lot of stuff in the independent movement. I don't even know. But I was in that restaurant, right, and I don't know why the waiter casually somehow just mentioned, Scientologists own this place or something, or head management of Scientologists or something, and somehow it just came up, right? It was really interesting. And I was like, oh, it's really interesting. So, I've heard about Tom Cruise, and I've seen this DVD, and then now suddenly the owners of Pancake Parlour are Scientologists, and I was kind of like, oh, it's interesting. Is this like some special sort of smarter than average person sort of people? Because also I was aware of Jews back then as well. I'd become aware of them because there's lots of Jews that are really, really successful in the entertainment industry and in the banking industry. Like, they represent 5% of the world's population, but when it comes to success, they're going really well. Like, they're really big and high up places in the world and stuff. So I was aware of the Jews, and I was like, yeah, why are these Jews really successful? And at the same time, I found out about these things about Scientologists, and I was like, oh, it seems like Scientologists are really successful as well. And so I kind of thought, oh, I wonder if it's kind of like the Jewish thing where, I don't know why, but they're just real successful. And I know now why Jews are successful, because they just must be just in their DNA. Like, seriously, if you give, like, they've got higher IQ on average than the average person. They're literally a smarter race than other races. And I've noticed it from Jews who I've met. I've thought that these people seem more intelligent than the average person. And but also it's because they've also got a culture of they really like money, like the stereotype, really. Or they like to be successful, so that they really want to be, the head of the bank, or they really want to have the best business and that sort of stuff. Like they seem to be pretty motivated people, and they seem to be pretty entrepreneurship sort of people, starting up businesses and stuff. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I was kind of like, oh, these Scientologists are a bit like the Jews. It was like a question, like, I wonder what's going on with these people. So I actually went on the internet and I went to the official Scientology site. I actually didn't really see any anti-Scientology. I might have clicked on one and I was like, I don't know what the hell this is, and just clicked off it. Because I don't think anyone can understand the researching Scientology can be such a big thing, because it's just got so many of its own language and so many of its own words. And that's in this podcast. I'm going to try and make the guests as well speak in a language that people who are non-Scientologists can understand. So I hit the internet, and I only really saw the official website, and I watched this video that was like, "Hi, I've been one of those really corny ones where everyone's got these big smiles and like, I've been a Scientologist for 3 years now, and I'm so happy, yeah." And it was just like, pretty ridiculous. And I was watching it thinking, okay, so these people are either brainwashed or they really are this happy from doing Scientology. But I just thought it was just an interesting video, and my friend watched it with me. He just rolls his eyes and goes, "This is just ridiculous." Because does the Church of Scientology realize how ridiculous their videos are? Like they're so out reality. They're so corny. Like they're just the corniest things. I'm Jimbo and I'm just winning so much. I love Scientology. Oh, I've got like perfect makeup and hair and the lighting's all perfect. And it's just like, I don't know. I would much believe just a normal camera going up to someone who's a Scientologist and then ask them, and don't do this whole corny setup where it's all like some fake infomercial thing. Anyway, so I watched that and I thought, I put it down in my diary, go into the Melbourne church and buy like their Bible so I can just see what they're about or something. So I went in, and what did I do? I started looking around, and then someone came up to me, and I this was in the Melbourne org before it became Ideal. This was literally 8 months before it became Ideal. And I said, I'm interested. Actually, I'd heard some N Theta that they only pay 50 cents an hour to staff members. I must have heard some N Theta thing on the internet or in the news. They only pay their staff 50 cents an hour. And at that time, I didn't have a job, and I didn't mind working for 50 cents an hour because I had enough money, and I just thought it'd be an interesting experience working in a cult, really. Like, I didn't know if it was a cult or not, but I thought it would be a really interesting experience working in Scientology, 50 cents an hour. I just thought, like, that's interesting, So I walked in, I spoke to him, and I go, I'm interested in finding out about Scientology and stuff. And I also said, and I heard, you guys have people work for you for 50 cents an hour. And I said, hey, I don't have a job at the moment, so I wouldn't mind trying some of that or something. And she just ignored it because it was just like, she knew I was new to Scientology, and she knew it was just ridiculous or something. And I think she mentioned, I think I said, can I do an IQ test or a personality test? Yeah, because I heard that they do the personality test. So I thought, this is really interesting. I'd love to get a personality test, see what my personality is like. So I did the personality test, and I thought the questions were really, really interesting. And then the results came back, and I was like, yeah, that's really spot on. That's exactly what I thought. That's exactly where I thought I was at. I totally agree with that. And I thought, this Hubbard guy's a genius. I was really impressed with the test. I was like, that is exactly where I'd put myself on the graph and stuff. There was no part of the graph that I disagreed with. The results were actually pretty damn terrible because I was pretty depressed back then. Anyway, and so I was talking to the girl about my problems, and she, I said because I put two and two together. And I was like, obviously they want me to do something about this, so. I was talking about it, and I go, so what do you want me to do? Like, what do I do? And then she goes, you got to read this book, and she handed me Dianetics. And I was like, oh, interesting. And I was like, I'm not really much of a reader. So I looked at the DVD, and I decided to get the DVD. And and then also, when I was doing the test, they had a lunchtime sermon while I was doing a test, and in another part of the room they were doing a lunchtime sermon, so the chaplain got up and just read some of I think the basic creed of the church, and there was just some little kids there talking. There's probably only 8 of them, and I was just listening to the creed of the church, and I was like, I agree with that sort of stuff. Like, that sounds good, you know what I mean? And anyway, so I had a really favourable opinion of it. I was like, this is really interesting, this is good. Then I went home and I watched the DVD, and I pretty much watched it in 2 days, and I loved it. I totally agreed with it. I thought that was, it answered a lot of questions for me and explained it. I agreed with a lot of it. I was like, yeah, these are the things that I thought this is how my mind worked and all this sort of stuff. Definitely rang true for me. I mean, the whole prenatal engram thing, I was like, well, I can't remember back then, but, that could be a load of crap. I don't know. I was just like, whatever. And so then I went back maybe a week later and bought the book, the Dianetics book, and was like, I've got to read the book now. And read the book, and didn't really know anything about clearing words or anything, and tried to understand it, and helped that I watched the DVD beforehand because I got the sort of gist of what it was saying. And I think also when I bought the Dianetics book, when I was in the org, I also started reading a bit of New Slant on Life, and the first chapter of that was a happiness chapter, which I think is really well written. And at that time, I'd been having problems with happiness, so I really liked that chapter on New Slant on Life. So I was like, I'm loving this. This is really good. And so then I did the Dianetics seminar on the weekend and did a bit of co-auditing and stuff. And I mean, there's interesting details I can talk about that, but I could do a whole podcast just on the seminar. But what's the point? Anyway, it's kind of funny actually, but so I had tried a bit of the auditing. I didn't really get much out of it, and I still to this day haven't really got much out of Dianetics auditing. But anyway, and I audited someone else, and but I thought it was all very interesting, really, really interesting, and it was really quiet in Melbourne org, by the way. It's really quiet now, but there was this period before the org went ideal. Basically, all the public had been scared away because they'd been so heavily regged to either join staff or to donate money to go ideal that it ended up just scaring a lot of the public away. So there was a period before Melbourne org went ideal where it was damn quiet, and that was when I'd sort of come in and it was damn quiet. And I remember thinking, when I was in there, I remember being in Qual and just asking some questions and seeing the books on the shelves and Qual me going, oh wow, Elron Hubbard wrote all this sort of stuff, and I was like, this is really interesting. He wrote a lot, it was really amazing. And I saw a course that said, how to get financially successful, and I was just like, oh, I want to read this, I want to read that, I want to blah blah blah. I was like, I liked all the things in it. And so I remember looking around and being like, thinking, this is pretty cool. Why is this place empty? And at that time, I didn't know if it wasn't a cult or not or anything. So I was a bit, like, oh, what's going on? I was suspicious, you know what I mean? Like the black PR had gotten to me, you know what I mean? Like I was just like, oh, what's going on, And when it's quiet, it makes it really, really. It's not good to walk into a quiet place. It makes it a lot creepier. And so I remember thinking, the average person isn't into philosophy and all these sorts of things that I'm sort of into. The average person just wants to drink beer and watch sport on TV. So that's why that's why they're not coming in. That's why this place is quiet. Which is kind of true. But after 6 years of being involved in it, I worked out what's going on. So it took about 6 years to get the answer of why the org was quiet. You know what I mean? When I first went in there. Because Scientology is a great thing. And I can tell you right now the reasons why it's quiet. Because RTC is changing the tech. And so people are leaving. People who are intelligent are waking up and leaving because they don't want to get non-standard tech. Also, upper management is not really advertising. I really don't think that they're advertising. Like, I don't notice in the time when I was volunteering at the Melbourne Ideal it seems like they're just hell-bent on regging the public that they have and just not getting new public in. So they're not advertising. And also, because of the corrupt upper management and the culture of that corruption filtering down, there's just a lot of dodgy shit's going on that's given Scientology a really, really bad name. So the average person doesn't want to go in there, doesn't want to have anything to do with Scientology because it's got such a horrific reputation. So there are a few of the reasons why. Because I'm pretty like the course rooms apparently there was actually people in them in the 60s and 70s, and there was actually activity happening in Scientology. Even in the 80s, I think in the late 80s there was still heaps of activity happening, and then in the 90s, once David Miscavige full on took over, the 90s and the 2000s, it just really died off, and it not just Scientology would still have people going into the churches of Scientology and stuff, even though it's screwed up. Right, people would still be going in if they were still advertising and doing all this stuff, but they're just not advertising. Like, they literally aren't. Like, there used to be a giant Dynetics billboard in Melbourne in the 80s, I think. And when L. Ron Hubbard was around, he was disseminating and focusing on that. But yeah, Miscavige and the church just doesn't promote. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, so what did I do? Oh, so I tried a bit of the Dynetics auditing. And then at that stage as well, I'd found out about the Purif. And I had taken some antidepressants for a few months earlier in the year. And so I was like, I want to get the toxins out of my body. And I'd tried some other drugs as well. So I wanted to get them out of my body or whatever. And I didn't quite think that the Dynetics auditing was really doing anything for me. I felt like, I like this Purif thing. Anyway, so I signed up for the Purif, and I ended up doing... This was still at the old org. And this is all such an exciting adventure. Anyway, it's so interesting, It's such an unusual thing to get involved in. It's so different to what you're used to. And then the philosophies of Scientology are so different. You're just like, whoa, this is really different. What? What, you can bend a spoon with your mind? Like, it's so exciting when you first get into it. So I spent a few months on the Purif, And it was creepy because there was like one or two other people in the sauna with me, and sometimes there was no one in the sauna. So it just had this whole creepy vibe where it's like, am I in a cult? People following me, like, ooh, like me, like paranoid, and it's so bizarre to sit in the sauna and be like you're supposed to sweat, and like it was just really strange. Anyway, so after a few months on it, like 100 days is quite a lot, and I wasn't really getting wins, and I was just like going in, taking the nice and getting turn-ons. Then they sort of fade away, and I go in the next day and do the same thing again and again and again. And I wasn't really getting anywhere, and then they put me on a few correction lists and stuff. It ended up turning out that I was PDS because I was living with my mum, who can be quite anger-toned, and my sister, who can be interpolative and stuff. And so I was in an interpolative environment, hence, why I'd had the depression and stuff like that in the past, and I blame the school system on that as well, and myself, of course. But so it turned out that I was PDS, and I was kind of pissed off because I'd done the accident-prone test before doing the Purif. I think it's called the accident-prone test, or the PDS test, or whatever, or leadership test, whatever it's called. And I remember specifically doing it and saying, "How did I go on that test?" And the person said, "You're being suppressed." They came and they said that to me, and I was like, "Okay, I agree." And I thought that test was a really good test as well. And they made me read information about PTS and stuff before I started the Purif. So I was kind of pissed off because I was like, hold on, we knew I was like PTS a bit before I even started the Purif, then why'd they let me start the Purif? So I was kind of, like, what the hell? I think they were supposed to give me a proper PTS handling before I went on the Purif, and like maybe even some objective auditing. I think I was supposed to really get some more theta back before I even approached this Purif, but I went on into the Purif just so green and so and a bit too PDS and stuff. So I was kind of pissed off about that. I think I actually years later, I wrote a thing to RTC saying, if someone does a test and it shows up their PTS, you give them a full PTS handling. You don't just like throw them in the sauna and just read a few chapters on PTSness and think that will handle them. Because I wasted 3 months, you know what I mean? Like 3 months is a lot. Like it was about 110 days in the sauna taking vitamins, and a lot of those days were on the 5,000 niacin. So I was taking heaps of vitamins. I was having to travel into the city every day. Like, not only does it cost a lot of money, it's a lot of effort. And I was just like, nah, because I was just determined. I wanted to get better. I wanted to get clear. I'd had these problems with depression. I was just determined. So I just rocked up every day. Never gave up. Anyway, so the ideal org opened up and all that sort of stuff. And, that's a whole other podcast or whatever. All very interesting, exciting. But anyway, so I ended up having to go back in on the Purif again and actually properly finish this thing. And I had to do a PDS handling before that. And this time I'd gotten some more theta back. I'd studied more of Scientology. I'd cleared some more words. I felt more safe in the environment. I wasn't thinking it was a cult and all this sort of stuff. And so I was a lot better. We're in a new building and stuff. And I was, anyway, I was a lot, better, and I was able to do it. So I basically almost sort of started the Purif again from scratch. And this time round, it still took about 67 days. And it wasn't even because I had much toxins. Like, really, it was more just the fact that I was, I just didn't have much theta left. Like, I had a bit of a rough life and stuff. And so, I was walking around a bit, pretty heavily keyed in and stuff. Because if you go in there happy and positive, I just imagine you can sweat better and your body works better and you can just boom, boom, boom. Whereas if you go in there keyed in, you're just like, you're keyed in all the time and you're just like, Anyway, so it took about 67 days and it was pretty smooth sailing. I didn't get huge wins out of it. I ended it, I'd gotten sort of toxins out and I felt better and stuff, and it was good in that. And, anyway, and then I, volunteered. I was volunteering at the org and stuff, and I lasted on staff for about 8 months or something, and it was just too hard for me to schedule like it is for everyone, but particularly for me, it was having case problems and that. It's hard to earn money and be on staff at the same time. It's just too many hours. Like, that's something that's really wrong about the way COB is running all of it. Is it just should be a lot more easier for people to volunteer, because it's hard. They actually make it hard for someone to volunteer. They just really get the most they can out of the staff, So it was getting hard, and I was having money problems and stuff, and I was just like, I said, I came into Scientology at the start to get better, and this whole staff thing is being a whole distraction and whole stopping me from getting better and doing the bridge and all this sort of stuff. So I really had to be firm with them and really lay it down, and they didn't give me much trouble either, because they must have felt the intention coming from me. It was just like, nut, back off. I'm leaving staff. I'm getting a job, blah, blah, blah. This is what I'm doing, And also, they probably didn't think that highly of me as well, because I'd taken so long on the purif, so they're probably like, oh yeah, this guy must be a bad case, so we're not too concerned to lose him from staff. Anyway, so I got some other job and that sort of stuff, and I was coming in on services and doing the objectives, and that was, whole podcast on that. Like, that's just interesting as. That was when I really, like, when I first ordered someone on objectives and they just started falling asleep, I was just like, whoa, my whole reality on the world's just been blown. Like, what the hell? I'm just asking her to touch a wall and she's yawning and falling asleep. Like, that was, like a whoa, like, wake you up out of the matrix. Like, whoa, this world isn't what you think it is. You know what I mean? Like, what the hell? That's pretty out there, Really interesting. And hearing people talk about things like exteriorization, other stuff, it's just like, whoa. Anyway, so I did the objectives the old way, like GAT1 way, and just took ages and had problems as well. Like, I remember my first session just being like, this is the most bizarre thing ever. Like, I was very Q&A and just like, what the hell? Like, I'm like, it was such an odd thing to be in session. I was just like so blown by it. I was just like, what the hell? Like, what do I do? How do I answer the questions? What am I supposed to do? Like, I was just totally found it really interesting. I think I was the sort of person that really needed like a smart auditor to just go, this is how it works, this is what you do, and just answer my questions. But because everyone's afraid to give verbal tech, everyone just goes, I'm going to read you this question and I'm not going to answer anything. So you just read you the question, that's it, and you work it all out. And so when you're new to it, you're like, what the hell? Like, it's so bizarre. Anyway, I think people are, pretty afraid to say verbal text. So they just don't really answer the PC's questions. And I think, auditors should do more answerings of the questions. And I think they should be a bit more comfortable with giving verbal tech or their opinion on things, because I think it just helps the PC to understand what's going on. Otherwise, you're just like, what the hell? Like, this is so odd. Like, I just found it so odd. I was like, what am I supposed to say? Because I had a mind that where a lot of things were going on, a lot of thoughts would run into it. So I'd be rushing through my mind. So I'd be like, just in general in life. So I'd be like, am I supposed to tell you everything I think at every moment? Like, I don't get it. Like, this, I think about stuff all the time. Like, am I supposed to just tell you what I'm thinking right now? Like, I just found it so bizarre. Anyway, I ended up working out that I think the CS ordered me to talk more because I was very quiet. And so then I said, okay, I'm opening up the floodgates then. Like, I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. Okay, I'll talk. So then I just talked about everything that would come to my mind. And I think then the auditor and the CS were like, oh, now we get why he shuts up, because he just has so much going on in his mind. You know what I mean? They'll be like, whoa, this kind of backfired us trying to get him to speak, because now he just talks all the time. So I'll be like, I'm thinking this, I feel this in my knee, and like there's all these things going on, right? Oh. Anyway, so I did get some wins. The biggest win I think I got was on SOP8C. Like, that process just blew my mind. That one was just like, whoa. Because I had problems with things that are boring, because SOP8C is quite particularly boring, and also it's control. And that's something I don't like, and something that is not good for humankind, really. Anyway, so I had a lot of charge on the whole issue of control and all that sort of stuff. And there was a win that I had on it that was, it was to do with, the auditor just asked me, can that button be pressed? And it was referring to a light switch. And I said, yes. And I was like, whoa, I know that for sure. I know you can press that button for sure. Like, because I heard these bullshit things that, the mesh universe doesn't really exist, and all these confusing things, and there's so much false data in life, you're so confused and stuff, but I was just like, you know what? This button might not exist, but this button can be pressed. That's something that I definitely know, And apparently this table might not be here, but this table is yellow, And it was a really big win for me, because you get people like Obama in the news, and a lot of 1-1s, and and the media. There's so much false information, and so you go along in life and you're so confused by everything. You're like, what the hell is going on in this? Like, you're not sure of anything. So I was like this little 21-year-old kid that wasn't sure about anything in life, because everything is just so confusing. There's just so much false data and lies. But I was just like, you know what? This fucking wall is a fucking wall. You know what I mean? You can't deny that. So that was a really, really big win for me, is that knowingness, L. Ron Hubbard says that the process does that, I think, in some of his stuff. But it started off with being like, I know the table's here, and then by studying more Scientology and the tone scale and stuff, I was like, and I know Obama is a 1-1, and I know he's lying, and it was more and more things, and I know this person's not, I was able to go from messed objects to more abstract ideas, and it was a really, really big win, because it was orienting me or whatever, and it was instead of being confused by everything, it was I had a reality now, instead of everything being this weird dream where you're not really sure what's going on all the time. Instead of being confused all the time, you're suddenly not confused. You're like, this is this person's tone level, and this is a table that does this, and blah, blah, blah. It's really good. And at that stage as well, I'd cleared a lot of words, so I was starting to be able to communicate a lot better and understand readings and that sort of stuff. Anyway, but then the GAT2 came out, and that sort of meant I sort of had to go back to the start again on objectives. But with GAT2, it's called Survival Rundown, and you just have to do heaps of processes, and heaps of processes. And I've seen some things, right, that talk about the OT levels, right, and some of the processes on them, and some of them were some of the processes that are on the Survival Rundown. So I found that really interesting. Just in the past few months, I've been looking at that. I've been looking into the OT levels and reading some of them, and they're all different. I haven't come across anyone who agrees on what the OT levels are on the internet. It's just so out there. But yeah, I have seen some things that I was just like, what the hell are they doing in the Church of Scientology? Are they taking processes from the OT levels and putting them on the Survival Rundown? But it was really weird, because I was like, I think I've ran that process. No, I think I've ran that one. And I was like, that's on Survival Rundown. What the hell? Anyway, I'm looking forward to doing my bridge. I'm probably going to be doing my bridge with the Ronsorg. And I'm really looking forward to doing the OT levels and finding out what the hell is going on with these OT levels and stuff. Because the tech just seems to keep on just changing and stuff, Definitely don't trust the church. I know that they're squirreling the tech. I mean, you just have to compare the old basics to the new ones, and you can just see the evidence, and it's just the tech's being made worse, without a doubt. Anyway, so I did the Survival Rundown, And I was better, but I didn't finish it on something where I was like really uptone and stuff. I was probably more, annoyed about how much time it took, because it took a lot. Like, I mean, I did a lot. I took a long time on my Purif, but the objectives was a new level. It was epic. So I also had to audit someone else. It was huge. Anyway, finished that, and I also had, in that time, I'd rejoined staff again, and then I started getting involved with comedy, and I had to quit staff. So of course I had to do a sec check, and I'd also started to become friends with someone who'd been a Scientologist since the 80s. He hadn't been a very dedicated one, but he'd been one around since the 80s. And I was talking to him, and I'm always interested in interesting things, and I'm always picking data from people and stuff. And he'd say things about the way things were in the past, and I was just like, oh, that's really interesting how things have changed and stuff, and oh, that's really, oh, wow. Like, and also I'd noticed how the church wasn't advertising. They seemed to just be trying to milk the current members as much as possible. And I just thought there's something not right about this organisation. Anyway, so I did the sec check, and it was pretty ridiculous, really, to think out how much money I had to pay for it. It was only like 1 or 2 intensives, but I was very unhappy at the end of it. I mean, I can't believe some of these people who are from the Sea Org and these people who have left, who have done all these hours of sec checks. It's just like, wow, because for me it was just like 1 or 2 intensives was enough. Like, I could see that there was something really wrong with these sec checks, and they were really making wrong and trying to find problems in you, and I was just like, I can't believe I was paying for it. Anyway, so then after the sec check, the ethics officers were trying to stop me from, in my free time when I'm not even on services, from doing like sort of meditation, and I just didn't think that it said anywhere that there's anything wrong with that. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, I'm not mixing practices, I'm not combining Scientology and other things. I'm just like, in private time, I'm just doing a bit of yoga. Like, it's fine, you know what I mean? Like, it's not joining with Scientology, it's separate. You know what I mean? I'm not doing Dianetic yoga thing. You know what I mean? I'm not doing Dianetic meditation or anything. Like, they're completely separate. And also, they'd found out that I looked some of the negative stuff on the internet, and they were trying to get me to sign something to promise that I was going to not look up Scientology on the internet. And I was just like, come on, like, that's a bit unfair, you know? Like, I'm interested in Scientology and that sort of stuff, and I didn't like that idea of taking away my freedom of how I use the internet. And also, they were trying to get me to pay taxes as well, and I just kind of thought like they were almost like in bed with the police department, if you know what I mean, or the government. It was like they were working for the government. I just didn't like the idea of these ethics officers making people into these nerdy, goody-goody Scientologists that pay their money to the government, so then the government can use that money to blow kids up. Like, I was just like, I just looked at the greatest good for the greatest number dynamics, and I was like, this isn't an overt avoiding paying tax, you know what I mean? It's just like, that money gets used for bad causes and stuff. And I also had a bit of a confusion on the definition of overt, and now I found out why, because they changed the definition of overt. Because you'd find something that's like, I know, like, according to one definition is an overt, and then according to another definition it's not an overt. So it was like kind of confusing. You know, like, I'll be like, no, this is good for my survival, it's not an overt, but then church will be like, it's an overt, you know what I mean? And so, like, it just... Anyway, it was exciting the time that I did the sec check, because I did it at an advanced org in Sydney. So that was exciting and stuff. But anyway, but the end of it, I ended up thoroughly disagreeing with... I ended up thinking that the sec check was pretty shit. Ended up thoroughly disagreeing with ethics, and thinking, like, because this young, you know, I don't know how old... maybe 23-year-old ethics officer, and I'm just like, I don't really know what the hell you know about life and stuff. Like, you're just following your orders. I don't even think you understand what L. Ron Hubbard's saying and stuff. And I just didn't like getting bossed around by someone who just didn't really know what... I just didn't find trustworthy and stuff, and couldn't really explain things well. And who also got a bit antagonistic with me and stuff. And I wasn't getting antagonistic with her. She got antagonistic with me, and I was just like... I remember one of the last things I said to her, I go, something's wrong here. And so I've now found out why. Anyway, so I ended up leaving that quite unhappy. And I was looking forward to doing a sec check and doing some other Dianetics. Sorry, before that I'd also done the grades and stuff, GAT2 style. Anyway, so I was also looking forward to doing a bit of net auditing and stuff. And so I'd just gone there and done this crappy sec check and wasted my time and it was really bad servicing. And then everyone in Melbourne were just talking about the AO as if it was so great and so fantastic and all this sort of stuff. And then you get there and you're like, the servicing was shit. The sec check was just like a load of crap and it cost all this money and then I just had to come home. Like, I was really unhappy with it. All up, it cost me like $10,000 and stuff and like time away from work and all that sort of stuff. And anyway, so I came back to Melbourne and I was picking the brains more of this friend who's been involved with Scientology since the 80s. Just getting information from him and stuff. And then I was just opening up and I was studying the basics and the basics in the church, just occasionally going in and stuff. And I'd done a fair few of them and I was kind of like, these basic books aren't what they're cracked up to be and stuff. And a lot of them just repeating the same points. And I was just noticing all these outpoints and stuff. And then there was a point where I was just like, I need to research Scientology more on the internet. And I'd actually been pretty well behaved. I'd actually avoided really looking up Scientology internet. And then I started hitting this internet and started really looking it up and then seeing how the independent Scientologists think the church is squirreling the tech. And I thought that was really, really interesting because I was like, wow, so there are people who are Scientologists yet they're not involved with the church? Like I thought that everyone who hated Scientology or who was attacking the church were all religion haters and just negative people and sort of stuff. I didn't think that there was actually Scientologists who don't have anything to do with the church. Because when you're involved with the church, you just don't know about these people. You don't know all about the independent movement. You just don't know about it. You don't know all about the Ron Zorg or the Advanced Ability Center or anything, or David May or Captain Bill Robinson. You just don't know anything about these people. You just think the people who hate Scientology and the attacks are just coming from some negative people in the media and some nutcase people who have left the church who are really angry. Anyway, so found out about all the information and stuff and everything made sense and decided I'm going to leave and that sort of stuff. And then the ethics officer tried contacting me and eventually threatened to come around to my house and that sort of stuff. Like, I don't know where that says in the policy that staff members should be going around to people's houses, but that's what goes on in the Melbourne organ and probably goes on around the world. To get the GI up or the ethics officers, they would actually go to people's houses and stuff because the org's so empty they've got nothing else to do. Like, it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous being on staff that they're running around trying to get the stats up when it's just like, hey, how about you advertise? How about you put flyers in letterboxes or go out in the city and body route or something? Like, how about you try and get people in instead of just annoying all the people who are going into the church at the moment? It's really, really ridiculous. So, where was I? Anyway, so I ended up informing the ethics officer. I just said, look, I'm going to be a part of the independent movement. I'm not going to be going into the church or anything. If you want to talk to me, you can. I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you what I know, and I'll tell about the squirreling of the tech and all this sort of stuff. And he didn't even write back. It was just a phone message, but he didn't even write back. He just shut up at that point, which is like, huh. And that's what I noticed what members of the church do, and people who will probably listen to this podcast who are independents as well and left noticed that it's so funny how they just put a wall up and just like, oh. It's like we talk to you heaps. Wait, he's become an indie, or you might be an SP, and they just totally cut the comm, and they don't even apply their own policies of communication as universal solvent and all that sort of stuff. They're just like, so no write back or anything, and he actually informed. I didn't get declared or anything. I haven't really. Well, I'm probably declared now, but anyway, I didn't get declared or anything. But he informed some of my friends and that who were church members, to disconnect from me and then said that Andy's gone weird. and that was their response. And because of course they wouldn't say, and he's joined the movement of people who aren't involved with the church. Like, they don't explain it; they just go, "Oh, it's H thing," and he's gone weird. You know what I mean? There's no actual, Anyway, so I had one friend actually call me, which was cool. He's a cool guy, and he was just like, "What the hell's going on?" and all this sort of stuff. And I spoke to him for about half an hour. I actually explained some of the points. I didn't go into too much detail, but I just said, look, the information's there if you really want to find out. But he just said, his sort of his wife or his family is all sort of in there. He's pretty heavily involved. I wasn't that heavily involved because my family wasn't involved in it. I'm pretty lucky. And so he was just like, it's been good for me, because he'd recently gone clear and stuff, and he was like, it's been good, it's good for me, and my family's involved and stuff. And I was just like, just fine, stay in that sort of stuff. But if you run into problems, you can always contact me and stuff. I was pretty nice about it, and so yeah, and he was just like, yeah, I'm gonna have to disconnect from you and stuff. And I was like, okay. Even though he didn't have to, like, even though there was no SP declare or anything, so this is how hardcore it is. Like, even you don't even have to get declared, and they still disconnect from you and stuff. Like, it's just a joke. Anyway, and so I was fine, Anyway, my biggest win in Scientology to this day has been finding out that the church is corrupt. It happened. There was about a month where I was listening to so much information about Scientology and reading it on the internet and connecting the dots. But I'd say there was a period of about 3 days where I was coming home from work and then just hitting this information, and then calling up my friend going, what the hell is this? The friend who was around since the 80s. And he was suspicious there was something wrong, and saying, do you hear what this thing's saying? He's left now as well. And I'm going, did you hear what this thing's saying? Like, what the hell's going on? This is like, what? It was such a shock to me, because I'd come along since 2010. I was thoroughly brainwashed, and I thoroughly thought COV was like this great dude, was making these awesome ideologues, and just the whole reality of everything just shifted, and it was just like, what the hell? Anyway, but I felt this huge freeingness of myself, because I wasn't scared about getting in trouble with the church. You know what I mean? It's just like, hey, I can do the bridge outside the church, fuck the church. And it was just like, yes, I'm free. I can still go up the bridge, you know what I mean? Because it's just like, if people who are church members know that they can do Scientology outside the church has lost them. They're just going to leave. They're just going to be like, screw this, I'm not putting up with this stuff. Heaps of people put up with a lot of crap because they think this is the only way they can go free. This is the only way they can get their bridge. It's not. Anyway, so my biggest win was, I remember listening to cool music and reading all these things and stuff, and reading stuff about David Mayo and all these things. And I did have a sensation. Literally my biggest win. It was just like, whoa, free and expansion, and just like real positivity and excitement. Like, whoa, this is whoa, and everything in the world making sense. And then understanding how the church got corrupted, and how governments get corrupted, and how communism works, and just all these things in the world just came together and made sense. And it was also like kind of sad as well, because it was like, how damn corrupt is this world, but it all made sense. So I went in, I think, one last time into the org, and when I looked around and how thoroughly empty the Melbourne Ideal Org was. This was about 5 years after its opening. It was so empty. So empty. And looking at the staff's faces with these new goggles in my eyes of, the church has been basically infiltrated by corrupt people. It's no longer what it used to be, and everyone's left, but there's still some people who are hanging around. And that's what I could see, and with these new goggles on, it was just like, wow, I can see the truth now, and all sort of made sense. It was really interesting. Like, now everything is the way it is, because it's just like, anyway. So since then I've just been, reading up more of Scientology stuff, and haven't been into the church and that sort of stuff. And because I didn't the last 2 years I haven't been doing much Scientology, and like obviously the last 6 months I haven't had anything to do with the church, but the last 2 years I've been doing less and less of it, and the amount of case gain I've been getting was huge by staying away from the church. I've been getting great case gain staying away from the church and doing things like little bits of meditation and yoga and changing my diet and going to a naturopath, and I've just gotten a huge case gain and stuff, and it was just good to stay away from that organisation because I wasn't as PDS to it, I think you're PDS to something when you're scared of it, like when you're worried you're not going to get your bridge or worried you're going to get in trouble. That's when you're PTS. Anyway, so I've had such great wins since being away from it. Anyway, so that's just a bit about myself and my experience with Scientology, and I plan on getting into doing the bridge with the bronze org and that sort of stuff, and I plan on, now that I've seen how much the basic books have been changed, I plan on rereading all the basic books, the old versions, which I'm really looking forward to reading, the versions from the 70s where they say by L. Ron Hubbard, not by RTC or any of this bullshit. And I'm really looking forward to reading History of Man, because that was one thing I noticed about the basics. They seem really weird, like the revised versions. Studying them, they just, like, paragraphs repeated themselves and stuff, and some paragraphs were just really hard to understand, and I think they've really been screwed with. And I've compared the old version of New Slant on Life to the new one, and they really have been screwed with. But I'm really looking forward to reading History of Man and getting the actual proper data, and it's like I kind of have to start again. But now I'm just so much wiser. And also, all this experience has made me into much more of a Scientologist, in that, like, I now understand where the end theta is coming from and what's going on, and a lot of the people attacking the church, actually people just want the church to improve and reform because it's screwed up. Much more of a Scientologist now, much smarter, and I understand how traps work and stuff, because there's that thing about traps, and most people who left the church know this. A trap is like, you choose to say that, you go into that and think that that's what you have to do. So you choose to trap yourself. That's the whole con of it. That's the whole trick of it. You choose to go along with it. That's the trap. Like, you don't have to actually physically put barriers up. People choose to go in there. It's really interesting. But I think that's it for the podcast. I'm going to introduce myself and stuff. And about me as well, I host a late night comedy TV show in Melbourne. And I'm an actor. And it's a bit of my personal side as well. And also I'd been making some videos on YouTube, just talking about Scientology and stuff. So that's me. All right, so I think that's it for the podcast, and I'm looking forward to our first guest on the podcast. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a very interesting guest. So that's it for this podcast. If you like it, make sure you subscribe to it on iTunes or whatever. If you want to see some of the funny comedy stuff I make, check out the Kink TV show on YouTube. And if you want to see some of the other Scientology videos where I talk about stuff, check out my personal YouTube channel, which is just my name, Andy Nolch. Andy Nolch, Nolch. And there's a bunch of videos there that I've been making. So thanks for listening, and until next time, take care of yourself and do what you want to do. Ni hao.